Okay, I guess we'll get started. First and foremost, thank you very much for coming out today. Obviously, we're going to be providing an update with respect to the ongoing homicide investigation on Langside Street. And first and foremost, I'll invite Divisional Commander of Major Crimes, Inspector Jennifer McKinnon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer McKinnon, the Inspector of our Major Crimes Division. I'm here to talk about a recent homicide that occurred over the weekend. Before I do that, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Winnipeg Police Service and myself to offer our sincere condolences to the family, friends, and all who knew the victims in this time of loss. This investigation is still in the early stages, but we do have some information that we are able to share with you today. On Sunday, November 26th, at about 4:05 a.m., General Patrol members from across the city responded to the 100 block of Langside Street for the report of multiple people injured. 5 individuals were located inside the residence with severe injuries consistent with gunshot wounds. Attending officers immediately started emergency first aid pending the arrival of paramedics. An adult male and an adult female were pronounced deceased at the scene. 3 additional adult victims, 2 males and a female, were transported to hospital in critical condition, where one of the male victims succumbed to his injuries shortly after arrival. The second adult female succumbed to her injuries early yesterday evening. The remaining 55-year-old male victim remains in critical condition. The deceased have been identified as Crystal Shannon Beardy, 34 years old. Stephanie Amanda Beardy, 33 years old. Melalek Leslie Lesikel, 29 years old. And Dylan Maxwell Lavalley, 41 years old. Lake St. Martin has lost 2 of their members of their community. They are mourning the loss of sisters, Crystal and Stephanie. We have reached out to the family and leadership to offer community support. The homicide investigators were able to contact Melalek's family in Kenya and the US, and they've been notified of his tragic passing. We've also been in touch with Dylan's family in Winnipeg, who are also reeling from this terrible event. Our hearts go out to these families and the community. Our family support resource advocate and victim services workers will continue to support the families through this difficult time. We encourage others affected by this tragedy to seek out and access supports as well. The homicide unit continues to investigate, but we are requesting your help. Anyone with video surveillance or information that may assist investigators is asked to call the homicide unit at 204-986-6508, Crime Stoppers at 204-786-TIPS, or online at winnipegcrimestoppers.org. Thank you for your time.
And I'll invite Chief Danny Smyth to come up and say a few words.
Good afternoon. First, I also want to acknowledge the victims and their families. We will do everything that we can to discover why this happened and who was involved. This is an extremely troubling event, and it certainly has shocked the community. We also know that homicide investigations that have multiple victims cause great concern and they cause fear in the community. And our members will focus on identifying and apprehending the suspect responsible for the crime. That work has already commenced with significant effort, canvasses in the neighborhood that occurred yesterday. Here are some of the other things we're doing in the short term to aid the neighborhood. You will see a police presence in the Langside Broadway area. Our forensics people will be on scene gathering evidence probably for the better part of the week. Our Central Division Community Support Unit and our Central Division General Patrol units will be vigilant and visible as possible in that area. So we also know that almost 20% of violent crimes are committed by people who are on bail or on probation. And our violent offenders unit will be working hard to apprehend offenders that have breached the conditions of their release. We don't know the suspect in this case, but that work is important as well. Our Guns and Gangs unit will continue to work their files in an effort to assist the homicide investigation. To date, over 500 crime guns have been seized from the streets. Last night alone, General Patrol officers were involved in other serious calls that saw them arrest individuals and seize firearms. Now, firearms are distinct, and we'll be watching for evidence that could link any firearms we come into contact now or in the future with the homicide on Langside. Finally, as Inspector McKinnon mentioned, we want to appeal to members of the public to bring forward information about anyone that they believe may have been involved in this horrible crime. Historically, we know that tips and information from the public have helped us identify suspects and solve crimes. So someone knows about this crime as well. This is a dangerous offender, in my view, and we must do everything that we can to identify that person and take them into custody. So I think I'll leave it at there in terms of opening remarks. Certainly, we're prepared to take some questions.
Chief, do you believe this is just one suspect you're looking for?
We don't. I don't have any information on a suspect at all. We're still working that.
Besides the two sisters, is there anything connecting all of these victims?
That'll be left to the investigators to determine who and why they were in the home together. So I don't have that.
Were they in one unit, or can you describe, was this multiple units? Were they, can you give us more of an...
So it's a multi-suite dwelling, and our understanding is they're all in one unit.
Was there anyone else inside the home at the time this happened?
Again, it's a multi-suite dwelling, so there were other people in other dwellings.
Was this a residence known to police previously?
Yes.
Is there any indication that potential for gang involvement or anything to do with drugs, anything like that?
Certainly nothing that we're aware of that we can share with you right now.
Chief, you spoke about it being, there being some fear. I guess when there isn't a suspect known, 5 people have been shot, 4 people dead. What does that say to the community about safety and how they should be feeling right now when we don't have a suspect in custody?
Well, our members do a pretty good job of following the leads, and I expect that, there's a good chance they'll be successful here. What I say to the community about when things like that, I totally understand when we have events like this where there's multiple victims, how it would cause fear and concern in the community. But also remind people that most of us live in neighborhoods where we rarely have to deal with violent crime, and that hasn't changed. But when crimes like this do occur, I think we need to acknowledge that it does strike fear in the community. There are some neighborhoods in our city that require additional help, and right now I think West Broadway is one of those neighborhoods right now, or at least part of West Broadway needs a little attention.
Is it concerning to you to not know at this stage whether or not it was targeted random gang connections? I know it's early.
No, it's not concerning to me. It's 24 hours. Our members will follow the investigation the way it goes and where it goes. Again, I have to emphasize early days here. So it's not like a television program. It's not going to be over in an hour.
Is it the same Crystal Shannon body who has been charged with 5 counts of arson damage to property in 2012?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Is it the same Crystal Shannon body who has been charged in 2012 with 5 counts of arson damage to property?
I don't know, but we can certainly follow up with you.
Can you tell us which were the deceased at the scene so that we can distinguish between...
Actually, I don't actually know myself, but we'll certainly
And maybe yourself or the inspector can speak just a little bit about, I know Councilman Coalition spoke about this before, but the gravity of having 5 people shot, 4 homicides in one night, same location, not something we see often.
So we don't see multiple victim homicides very often, but we do see them occasionally. And so this isn't uncharted, but it's still shocking nonetheless. And it's still a heavy burden for our members who are the first responders on that. And you know, as is seen by the attention here, it's a shock to the community.
Can you talk a little bit, you said that forensics makes for up to a week, like, can you talk a little bit about what they're having to go through?
Well, simply put, it's a scene examination, but there are a lot of different phases to that. And it'll take a little bit of time for them to work through that. Could be up to a week.
Now, you talked about an increased police presence in the area, but you seem to reference the forensic. Is it just the forensics that's increased, or will people in that area see more police on the ground?
So they'll definitely see the forensics and the backup of forensics present on Langside for the balance of the week. I mentioned our community support officers and our general patrol. They're pretty vigilant about what's happened, so any additional time that they have, they'll be paying some special attention to the area, to the neighborhood.
Can you give us a picture of what was going on inside this suite?
I can't actually. That's part of the investigation. I don't even know what happened in the suite yet. Got to let the investigators do their thing.
And do you know the shooter? Just one shooter or multiple?
Don't know.
Do you know then, did that person or did those people, did they arrive when the shooting happened?
So you're asking a lot of details about the investigation, and I think we prefaced this whole thing is we're not in a position to tell you anything about the investigation while it's ongoing. Once we know that stuff, we'll be the first to tell you.
Any concern about perhaps overtaxing the homicide unit? I know they've also got 2 homicides that they're investigating from last week. Now they have 4 more. Any concerns over, or any plans to shift resources to the homicide?
So I had an opportunity to spend some time with the homicide unit yesterday, and remarkably, they're doing pretty well. You bring up a valid point, Glenn. This is probably the 10th file that they've managed in November alone. My concern, however, is it would shift to our frontline people. They're the ones that get there first. They're the ones that manage the witnesses and manage the victims. They're the ones that are doing the heavy lifting at the front end of this. This is fatiguing to our members and stressful, frankly. And let's keep in mind that they're also the same people that are dealing with all the protests that have been going on since October 7th as well. So we are taxing our frontline people pretty significantly.
Chief, you spoke about the number of guns seized, and obviously this is a gun-involved homicides. Can you speak just on the prevalence of guns and shootings and homicides this year? Is it worse than others? Are we seeing it worse than others?
So I think we've got the breakdown. Can certainly give you the breakdown of gun-related homicides. I don't have the figure in front of me. Gun violence was trending down across the city in every part of the city except the Central Division. That's where these homicides occurred. So we know that Central Division, and in particular the West Broadway neighborhood, needs a little extra attention right now. Overall, we were seeing things trend down, but violent crime in Central Division is trending up. So that's something we'll want to focus on. In terms of firearms itself, we can give you that breakdown. Inspector Hall and his team there in Guns and Gangs and Organized Crime doing a tremendous job, trying to manage this. As I say, they've taken off over 500 crime guns this year alone. Just last night, General Patrol took off 3 crime guns. So, we're doing our best to address that. I believe it's 38 now.
Were any of these victims known to police previously?
Yes,
Can you say which ones?
all of them.
You sort of touched on this, the impact on the front line. But an incident like this, where they go into a scene like that, I can imagine it's quite traumatic and pretty chaotic. at the time. Can you touch on that, just the impact for those officers who did respond and went into that unit or were helping people inside or outside?
So I've spoken about this in the past, and you know, this situation was no different. Our people often get there before paramedics and any other first line responders get there, and they're there to deal with the situation. We've probably applied more tourniquets and suction bandages that have saved more lives than I could even describe. You know, it depends where a person is at in their career. At some point, you're going to experience something that you've never experienced before, and that has the potential to be stressful and traumatic. In other cases, we've had some members that they've been through this a few times, and they learn how to cope. You know, we had our wellness unit out that night, just to touch base with our members, and as far as I can report, everyone's doing okay.
We see this kind of term used in the States a lot, mass shooting. I mean, does this sort of meet the definition of a mass shooting, would you say?
Well, often mass shootings are in the context of an active shooter. This was not an active shooter in my view, but it was a homicide with multiple victims. And so I guess we could nuance whether that is a mass shooting or not. I mean, certainly 4 deaths and a 5th one that was wounded. That's a lot of people to be wounded or killed in one of them.
Do you believe that this is an isolated incident? I mean, the shooters are still around.
I have nothing to suggest that it's an ongoing event. We have no other reports of any other violence that's similar to this. So at this point, we will focus on trying to identify this person. Obviously, they've gone to ground right now, but we'll try to take them into custody as soon as we can.
Chief, is there any indication that this person was in the suite with them prior, like hanging out with them, or if they
Don't know, actually. You know, hopefully things like the forensic examination will give us a clue.
In the hours or days leading up to this, have police been to this suite?
Not as far as I know, but we've certainly been to that dwelling before.
How long ago?
You know, my understanding is that we've had occasional calls for service there over the last couple of years.
And for what reason?
You know, I'm not really sure, but I know that the units have been working with the caretaker of that facility. So.
You have any news about the man that still in the hospital?
Yeah, so as far as I know, he's still critical. He's under treatment for a pretty serious injury. You know, at this point, we're just hoping that he recovers.
Is there any indication of where that person is from, or where their family might be?
I think local.
And will more information about him, like his name, be released?
You know, it's kind of not appropriate. I mean, he's still very much alive. He's in medical care. There's some privacy around that. You know, once we get the opportunity to speak with him, then we may have other information that we can share.
Is there anything to suggest that this incident is linked to any previous or recent incidents?
Certainly don't have any indication of that right now. As I say, early days right now. Our members are trying to piece things together.
Okay, we'll close it off there. If there are any other follow-up questions, as you all know, you're welcome to contact the PIO. We'll do our very best to provide you with that additional information. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.